So for this tutorial, we're going to make the texture for the table or the floor, and we're going to make the coffee basically in the cup, and this is how to do it. Okay, so open your last coffee cup file, and hopefully it looks something like what you left off with. So this would be what I left off with, and if you don't know how to get to your last file, you can just select this little icon up here, and hopefully it's the last one on the list or it's in that list. So mine was cup 3, and select it, and then there's your cup. Otherwise you can go to File, Open Recent, and it might be in that list. It's a bit bigger list, or just Control Open and navigate to where your last file was. Right, so now we're going to make the coffee in the cup, and we're going to make a surface, a better surface for it to sit on, the coffee cup and saucer. So with your coffee cup selected, press Tab to go into edit mode. Now we want to select an edge loop that's inside the cup. Now I can see there's an edge loop here, but I can't select the inside one, it only selects the outside one. But if we go over to the modifiers on the right hand side, click on that, and we'll go to this little eye, and we'll hit that, and it shows us without the modifier. So if I hit Alt and select that whole loop, so do that, you need to be in either vertex mode or edge mode. Remember, hold down Control and push Tab, and then you can select from one of those. Oops. If I did select that one, I can also select that loop. Now, what we're going to do is duplicate it, so Shift D, and you can push Enter. That's probably the best way of doing it. And now we're going to separate it from the model. So we're going to push P and select that top one. Now it's its own mesh, so we can get out of the cup. So push Tab, select that line, which is going to be hard to do. We can select it over here actually. See how I made sure it was selected? I just hid the cup. That's obviously a good way of doing it. You can hide things to see other things. Now that it's selected, let's look at the cup again. I'm also going to take the eye so we can see with the modifier, and with select on back and select the cup and have a look at the cup in subdivision mode as well, and we can just go back to that line, select it, press A, make sure it's all selected. It would be hard at this stage to see it, and push F for face. Now you can see it. I'm going to inset, drag it in once, inset, drag it in again, inset, drag it into the middle, and then Alt M, merge at center. Now we'll just hide the coffee cup again, it's up to the right. So I just want to select this outer loop. So Alt, and we're going to extrude, so push E and then Z and drag it up a little bit. So that's going to be our coffee. I'm just going to go over to the right and just show the cup again. Now I'm going to push A and then A again and drag that whole coffee cup texture up so the cup looks a bit fuller. I'm just going to push Tab to go into object mode to see how it looks. That looks pretty good. If your coffee at the top looks a bit like it looks like it might be a bit of a gap around the edge because we've dragged it up a bit, what we can do is select the outer ring again, make sure it's that top ring, and then scale it out just slightly. And then show the cup again and see how you're going with that. It was fine before for me, so I'm happy with that. It's fine now. Even more fine. I'm also going to push smooth because there was the, you can see the ridges in there. So we've hit smooth shading. Now we're going to put our coffee texture on the top of it. So what we're going to do is go over to our materials and we're going to add a new texture. So yeah, with the plus button up here, then new, double click on it and we'll just call it coffee. Right, and we're also going to click on the cup texture because we don't want the cup texture in our coffee. So we'll get rid of that. And we need to go into edit mode, so push tab, select all of our coffee, and we actually need to still assign. So we select all of the model for the coffee and push assign. Now that assigns that new coffee because the old one was still assigned, but we took it off, so that means it had nothing, and now we added this one to it. Now we're going to need some materials. So scroll down to mix shader, and then down here we're going to choose our first shader. We're going to choose diffuse. Then the next shader we're going to choose glossy. Now for our colors, we're going to hit the little dot icon here and we're going to choose image texture. Open one. Now you can download this image or find your own image, but I'll put this link to this image in the description. I'm going to use top view of coffee cup texture. So double click on it. That's our coffee cup texture. Now it's kind of come up as nothing at the moment because we haven't UV unwrapped it. So making sure it's all unwrapped and I'll select it all first, then unwrap it. So push U. Just use the first one, unwrap. We don't need to do any of these others for this. And now we're going to have a bit of our image there. So Blender now knows sort of where this image has got to go. So that's a good start. Now, for the next one, the glossy, we're going to add another image texture. But I think what we'll do is we'll do that in a new window. So up here, this little diagonal up here, so drag that out. So we've got a new window. Alright. So I'm going to get rid of these side toolbars here and in this one here because we're not going to use them for this. So push T to remove the tools and the properties here, so push N and do the same on the other side, T and N. Now if your computer's not too powerful, don't do this, but I'm just going to do this to show you what's happening. I'm going to push Shift Z, so you can see what's happening to the coffee cup. And on this right hand side window, I'm going to push this little icon down the bottom here to select what window we're using. I'm going to use the node editor. Alright, and we're going to go down and select the materials tab. I might just move that across so I'll get a bit more room. I'll zoom in on that so you can see what's happening. And I'll zoom in with the mouse wheel on this one to see what's happening. So you can hopefully read that a bit better. So first of all, we'll select the image texture. And I'm going to Shift D and bring it down here. So we're duplicating it with Shift D. The glossy texture, let's just separate that a bit so we can see what's going on. And so we're going to put this one over here so we can see the coffee texture a bit, but that's not what we want. What I want to do is load a different image texture for this one. So here's another one, it says reflections. So click on coffee cup reflections and we can see exactly what's happening now. So there's no reflections on the foam of the coffee, but on the water part there is an extreme amount of reflections. So we can turn that down. By altering this mix shader up the top. So scroll that down to something that you like. I'm going to use a value of 0.035. Okay. So that's sort of a reasonable amount, but you can play with this obviously, mess around with it. Don't just do exactly what I'm showing you either. You'll come up with something better, no doubt, if you play with it long enough. Now, also one more thing that just sort of improves it a little bit more, we're going to add a bit of a displacement to this as well. So we're going to go Shift A and we're going to add a converter down to math. We'll stick it about here. I'll change this to multiply. Where are you? There we are. And we're going to drag the color into the top value. And we're going to drag the value output to the displacement at the top here. That one there. So as you can see, it's sort of made it a bit more of a displacement there, but it's looks a bit wrong. So we're just going to knock it back a lot. So let's just try a value of 0.1. See what you think of that. You could also try a value of 0.05. Obviously you could just try values all day. But 0.05 is not too bad. It's obviously not right, but the effect is there. If you made your own better coffee texture or pulled a better picture off eBay, it's not eBay, just Google or the internet, obviously take a picture of your own coffee as well, that could be a good one. And to make the reflections map, you do have to take your photo into maybe GIMP and make a black and white image. So the parts that you want reflective are going to be white. So in your reflections map, so this is the reflections map. Sorry, if I can just move this there. So that's the reflections for this coffee cup. So they're reflective. The black is non-reflective, and you can have greys in there as well if you want partially reflective. So it does do that. But that's how you get the reflection map. Basically, I've done it by importing just that coffee picture texture and just flat out doing the contrast, and then I had to invert it because it was the other way around. Now, that'll do for our coffee cup texture. If you wanted to see how that was going to look, you can do a quick render of it. So do a quick render. Don't do a long render. So we're not going to use 2000. Do a render of 50. And you can use 100%, that's fine. So this will probably take a couple of minutes still. Depends on your computer. Which is a slightly better render than I've got in the other viewport. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's work on the floor or the table. So, right click on the floor. That's not going to work. Let's get out of rendered view and get out of edit mode. That's what's stopping us. Now we've got this principled shader that we had before. We're going to use that still. So this is going to be some fun you can have with the floor. So what we're going to do is add an image texture. So you can do it here by going Shift A, add a shader, and then, well, no, texture, sorry, then image texture. You can do it there, or you could still add it in your materials tab over to the right. So you could go on color, image texture, and then add it that way too. And it automatically links it to the base color, which is what we would have done with that one. So push delete to get rid of one if you needed to get rid of another one. Now you can see that's pink because it's got nothing on it. We're going to open the wood plank, which is also going to be linked down in the description. Double click on it, or click on it once then push enter. I'll just go into rendered view so you can see what's happening. So that's applied that quite well. Obviously can't see it because we haven't UV unwrapped that floor. So I'll go and UV unwrap the floor. There we go, see the whole floor there. I'm going to push T so we can see the tools, because what we're going to do next is we're going to need to subdivide this plane. So push W. In edit mode, push W, make sure it's all selected. Subdivide. Now let's subdivide it a few more times. So I'm going to push 4. That's just going to help with the displacement. So now that it's all selected, if you've done anything, just make sure you push A, select the whole thing, push U, UV unwrap, and now your wood texture is mapped onto that plane. Now those planks of wood are a bit large. It looks a bit ridiculous. So I'm going to push T, get rid of that so I can see that window a bit more. Drag that over. I might go into camera view. So push O on the number pad so we can sort of see what's happening. That looks a bit misty and cool. But we're going to work on the wood texture first anyway. Now the size of that. Now come down to this little window down here. Click on UV image editor. Click on down here. We're going to click on the texture. Now we're going to make sure all of that's selected and scale it up. So S, pull it up until you think the wood grain looks about, the wood surface, sorry, looks right. Looks about the size you want. You don't have to use my wood texture. You could be using another wood texture. I'm going to leave it about there. Now change back to the the node editor. And now what I'm going to do is give that wood texture some bump and a bit of niceness to it. So now the magical trick here is drag this colour down to displacement. So that's given that wood bumpy look. And we might just play with something, might take the alpha down, plug it into sheen, so it's a bit more sort of glossy on that, but it's also using the alpha channel to do that, so the darks won't reflect as much. Now if you manage to do that, alright, actually we can get rid of this window by going and dragging that back, so that little arrow, that big arrow pops up, and let it go. And then there's your coffee cup. Now that basically concludes adding the textures. Finally I'm just going to do a render. So go back to render, I might up the ante a little, and then render that one out. Now this is a classic example as why you might do a test render before you actually do your final render. So rendering at a lower sample rather than 2000 might have been good. You can see the table, that looks pretty cool. That top doesn't look very reflective. We might have altered the angle of the cup. So I'm going to push escape, but if you wanted to save it, push F3. There we go. Save it as coffee cup PNG, push the plus on your notepad and go save it as another version, hit enter, then you saved it. Now push escape. Now you can see the reflections a bit from the edge of the cup to the coffee, so you might have wanted to render it like that. I would have. I'll do it again anyway, just for the sake of this video, just show you what sort of a better image is going to look like. Here goes. I'm sorry, how do I render? I render with F12. Okay, that's a lot better. For this one last thing I'm going to add is a spoon. So we'll add a spoon to this as well, just for the sake of making it look a bit more, give it a bit more to the scene. And look out for that in the next tutorial.